Don't you get the car?
You usually say that writing is harder than directing.
Yes.
But how much harder is to write and direct the 6th episode of a franchise when many stories have been told before and you have the challenge to not being repetitive?
The exciting part about that is you take all of the movies that have come before and you look at what they haven't done. And when you put all the things together, they tell you what needs to happen next. In a lot of ways, that makes it easier than coming up with something from scratch.
How are you not going to let that happen?
I'm working on it.
Because one interesting thing about this episode of Fallout is that you come back to the previous one. Were you looking some closures in the stories? Do you feel that some stories need to end in this movie?
No, not really. We were definitely looking for some closure to the story with Michelle Monaghan's character, with Julia. Tom, when we first started talking about this movie, I said, what's one thing you want to do? Oh. And he said, people are still asking me about Julia. They feel like Ethan hasn't moved on from that story. And so I want to do something that brings closure to that story. Beyond that, we left everything open.
And the action sequences are insane in this movie. How do you decide each one? Do you call Tom and you said, could you do this for me? Or Tom called you and said, I want to do this thing?
Both. Tom definitely wanted to do a sequence where he was flying a helicopter, and after shooting American Made and doing some of his own flying in an airplane, he was excited to push that to the next level. Having worked with him for a long time, it feels like every movie is a rehearsal for the next movie. He learns something on a movie and says, ooh, we can do more with that, we can take it farther. We did underwater work on Edge of Tomorrow, and then in Rogue Nation we ended up doing a big underwater sequence. So we're always trying to take what we learn and push it to the next level.
It's incredible and hard to watch at the same time, that moment when Tom breaks his ankle.
Yes.
So how worried were you in that moment when that happened?
Well, I wasn't worried before it happened, and after it happened, my first thought was that he was acting when he pulled himself up and ran past camera, because Tom's not afraid to make Ethan look vulnerable. So of course I thought he was just acting. And as soon as I said cut, and I could see something was definitely, he was still acting. and so I knew something was definitely wrong. But he was actually in great spirits about it. He was a real trooper.
In what moment of your process do you think in the fans? Is that something that you, from part of your process, or you make the movie that you want and later you expect that they like it?
Well, the very first conversation I had with Tom when he asked me to come back to do this movie was about the fans. I said, the fans expect a different director every time. And that's a precedent that this franchise has established. And Tom said, well, precedents are made to be broken. And I said, okay, I'll do it, but I'll do it on the condition that I can be a different director, that we maintain that aesthetic and it looks as though a different director did it. So if you're a fan of the franchise, we worked very hard to make sure that it felt like a different vision and a different experience, continuing from one movie to the next.